Welcome to podcast number 24 of Parenting on Empty. Author and humorist Mark Twain once wrote, "If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything." And more recently, J.K. Rowling, in her book, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, wrote this about the truth. "The truth," Dumbledore sighed, "it is a beautiful and terrible thing, and should therefore be treated with great caution." And author Henry David Thoreau wrote this, "Rather than love, than money, than fame, give me truth." Well, we thought we should spend some time talking about parenting as it relates to the truth. Enjoy the show, and thanks again for tuning in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay.
Truth is something that I care about very deeply, as you know. It's kind of my number one thing. And I think one of the hard parts about being a parent is when you realize that your kids are not 100% truth tellers all the time.
Yeah, not just kids, everybody. I think we all have issues with telling the truth, and it would be nice if children started out as Vulcans, because, as we all know, Vulcans cannot lie. Wouldn't that be nice if you had kids that were incapable of lying?
It'd be even nicer if I could just mind meld with them, and then I would know the truth.
Well, that's true. Take care of that right away.
But barring that.
Yes, fact of the matter is, we have normal kids, and they are going to tell a lie from time to time. It's a bit of a dance, don't you think? We have to figure out, how do I determine if my child is being honest with me? Especially in matters where you're really wanting to, figure out, what should I do here? How do I solve this problem? How do I solve this conflict?
Yeah, I think the hardest part is, especially with a younger child, like we have a 7-year-old and a 15-year-old at this point, younger children are still developmentally defining reality and fantasy and truth and untruths, and are kind of experimenting with all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
Our youngest watches a television program called Wild Kratts, and these are two guys who like nature, and they go out into nature and they explore what it's like to be different animals and different insects. And one of the ways they do this is they turn into cartoon characters and they become whatever it is they're exploring. So they become a honey badger, they become a butterfly, they become a bobcat. And our daughter, for the longest time, when she found out that you could get these power suits, that's what these guys would put on to enable them to become these creatures, she found out that you could get them on eBay. She was convinced, at least she told us she was convinced, that if she bought that power suit, she would be able to turn into these creatures as well. Did she really believe that? I don't know. It was hard to tell, because for her, the lines between reality and fantasy are still a little shifty. Yeah. And she wants it to be true so badly that it's kind of, if I believe it long enough, maybe it will really happen. And I know that sometimes when we've been talking to her, I'll say, "Did you do this, Michaela?" And she'll say, "No." And then I'll ask her again, "Did you do this?" "Yes." "Well, which is true?" And she just stares at me like a deer in the headlight.
What's going to work best for me? That's what I'm trying to figure out here.
Well, and I'm not even sure all the time that it's that devious, because she'll say completely contradictory things all the time. Right. She'll say, "It's really hot." And then 5 seconds later, she'll say, "I'm so cold." And there's no vested interest in protecting herself there. I mean, she's not trying to get out of trouble. She's not being devious. It's that a lot of times what comes out of her mouth doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense if you're listening to the words carefully.
Yeah, you just kind of have to figure out what's her character and what's she trying to do. There are some more black and white issues the other day. I wasn't keeping track of how much television she had watched. And so
she wasn't monitoring herself?
She wasn't monitoring herself.
That is so weird.
Yeah. So she knew she couldn't watch television all morning. And I said, how long have you been watching? Just this episode, she said. Just this episode, and it's 40 minutes long. Something like that. You're sure you've only just watched this one episode? Yeah, just this one episode. Is it okay if I watch a couple more episodes? Well, okay. And what she didn't realize is that Netflix keeps a record of what you have been watching with the date. And so I go to another computer and I go on to Netflix. Oh, she has actually watched 3 episodes on this day. And so I go back to her. I say, are you sure you have only watched 1 episode? And I want you to know that there is actually a record of how many shows you watched this morning, and I just checked it. Yeah, I've watched 3 episodes, she said.
So then how do we speak into our children's lives to get them to value honesty when actually honesty can sometimes cost you?
Right. And I think that's the trick. That's the trick. Can we model honesty? I think we have to. You just can't tell your kid, you've got to tell the truth, you got to be honest. Sometimes, as a parent, I'm not going to be honest, and I'm going to sometimes lie to you. But you, as the kid, you have to always be honest. You just can't do that. There's some social things. If you think their artwork that they came home with is not the most amazing piece of artwork, you don't say, well, this really isn't all that good. No, you stick it on the refrigerator and say, wow, that was very good. Because it's something they created. And anything they create is worthy of praise. That was good because you were creative.
I think the other way is talking to them about it when they get to be a little bit older. Our 15-year-old, we've already had many conversations about honesty. And, the example you just used, you aren't saying to that child, this is the best piece of art I've ever seen in my life. You're saying, for your age and for what art is supposed to be doing at your developmental level, this is amazing.
Right.
Because basically when they're younger, what you're going for is nurturing their creativity, tapping into their imagination, helping them to experiment with colors and shapes and forms, and you're not really looking for a polished, trained, absolutely beautifully composed picture.
Right.
So to say, this is amazing and it's great, that's technically not a lie.
Right.
Now, if you said, this is the best piece of art I've ever seen and it needs to be up in the Louvre, that would probably be a lie.
Yeah.
But our older child has noticed some of those social niceties and says, well, is that the truth? And you can have conversations and begin to explain the complexities of truth, that truth is not always this easy black and white thing, that sometimes love supersedes telling the absolute technical truth. Like, do you think I am a really good cook? Well, to say, no, I think you're a terrible cook would be hurtful. But you can say, in very tactful ways, I appreciate that you cook for me, and I appreciate the effort that you put into it, and I really liked this particular dish that you did the other day. I don't always like everything you cook, but I don't like everything that I cook. There are lots of ways that you can say things without blatantly lying.
Right.
And still being gentle and kind and loving. And, communicating that nuance, they have to be developmentally capable of understanding that level of abstraction.
Yeah. And also there's that issue of, as an adult, as a parent, lying to your child by omission. And what I mean by that is, if, say, our 7-year-old says, "Hey, can you play with me?" And I say, "Yeah, I'll just let me finish this job I'm working on. Maybe give me about 20 minutes, and then we'll play a game." But then something comes up. You get a phone call, or I don't know, you get distracted.
Or you get tired.
And you don't end up playing with.
Yeah.
And you do that, you only have to do that, in my mind,
just a couple times.
Just a couple of times, and then pretty soon they think, you know what? My dad's not honest with me. Because he says he'll do something. He says he'll play with me, but then, as it turns out, it doesn't happen.
So what do you do if it doesn't happen?
I think you have to have the presence of mind to say, I told you I was going to play with you after about 20 minutes, and I got distracted, or I forgot, or whatever the reason it is, and I'm sorry, because I told you I was going to do something and I didn't, and that's lying, and I apologize for that. And I think you clearly have to communicate. Just by that action, that does communicate. Honesty is important to me, and trust is important to me, and I jeopardize that with you because I said something and I didn't do it. So they see it displayed in you.
So in the role modeling, part of what you're saying is that we need to be very careful what we say to our kids, what we promise them. A lot of times we kind of flippantly say things to them just to get them to leave us alone. Yeah, I'll do it later.
Right, yeah.
And it's really just stop bugging me about this and go away.
Yeah.
And then once they've stopped bugging us, it's easy to forget it and just say, they're gone, I don't have to deal with it.
Right.
But in essence, you're training them that honesty doesn't apply to you, that honesty is not something that you value, and that it isn't an integral part of your character.
Right, and that...
So you're giving lip service to it, but you're not really living it.
Right. And I think they may not be thinking that in their mind to say, my mom or my dad, they're not completely honest, so it's okay for me not to be completely honest. But I think they're processing that.
Yeah. With our 7-year-old, when she has done some things and then tried to cover it up, and then we found out about it, and then she tells the truth finally. At this point, we haven't given her any severe consequences for those actions. We talked to her about it. We talked to her about how her character is basically composed of all of the choices that she makes, and she chose to lie, and that you can't trust a person who lies, and that damages our relationship with her. I don't know in the short term if that has any impact on her, whether she can process all those words. But in the long term, I think if you have that conversation enough, if you emphasize it enough, and we talk to her about the character that God expects from her, that He wants her to speak truth, and that when you don't speak truth and you hide things, pretty soon you have to hide more things and your life gets really complicated. So far we haven't had any huge consequences because the things she's tried to hide and deceive us about, the lies, have been very small.
Yeah.
So the consequence needs to fit the infraction.
Right.
Our 15-year-old has already had some opportunities to lie in a way that there are some pretty big consequences. And I think the most disheartening thing is when a child lies and then you work through that whole thing with them and you give them the consequence and you see repentance and you see some changed behaviors and you begin to trust them again, and then they lie. at that moment when you have finally really said, I think we've made progress, I think we can trust this person again, and you begin to give them freedoms, and you loosen up the consequences, and then there's a repeat offense.
Right.
So my tendency when there's a repeat offense is to just forget it. I mean, we trusted you, you're not trustworthy, we just can't trust you anymore, and to clamp down and take everything away.
Right.
A slight overreaction.
A little bit.
Just a little
bit,
yes.
Yeah. And, one of the issues is that we all struggle with being honest. For some people, it's more difficult than others. But that's something that you can never say, you know what? I've learned what it means to be honest and to tell the truth. And now I'm never going to lie again. It just doesn't happen. And so I think it's real important that we don't start communicating that I think you're a dishonest person. Separating the action from the person.
Well, I think it's a really good point, because when we begin to pigeonhole our kids and say, okay, well, this is who you are, it becomes a self-predictive prophecy.
Correct.
And you want to avoid that at all costs. You don't want to label, okay, fine, you're a liar. I'm going to treat you like a liar, and that's how they begin to live their lives. Now, technically, if a person lies, yes, they are a liar. But your point is, we all are liars. We all are sinners. We all are prideful. That all of us have these flaws within us,
right,
that we exhibit at various times in our lives, but they are not the things that define us.
Right, and it's important, and one of the things I try to communicate to our 15-year-old and to the 7-year-old is that I want to have as close a relationship with you as I possibly can. I don't want to do things to damage our relationship. I'm not going to be insulting. Even if it's to joke, I won't say insults. Now, fortunately,
I'm raising my eyebrows.
Fortunately, this is a podcast, and so they can't see you smirking at me. It's like, what? I mean, I've never heard that before. Yeah, and I do. I have I tease, and I do have a sarcastic wit, and sometimes it goes overboard, but.
Not very often.
And I've apologized.
Yes, you have.
On occasion.
Yeah.
Sometimes I haven't, to be perfectly honest.
Good for you.
Thank you. But I am constantly thinking I don't want to jeopardize that relationship. And there are things that jeopardize the relationship, and one of them is lying. Dishonesty. That hurts the relationship. That damages the relationship. It doesn't destroy it, but it can do damage to it. All it really takes to restore that is just being honest.
So when the child confesses because they know you already know, my difficulty is I get a little cynical and I think, well, the only reason you're confessing is you know we already know, and so you're caught.
Yeah.
Is that truly really a confession?
Yeah.
And do you really deserve any kind of absolution and forgiveness? And again, that comes back to, no, none of us deserve absolution and forgiveness. That's what mercy and grace is. And I think I really want to be continually communicating to my kids that they are being extended grace. That the infraction of lying was wrong. And I never want to give them the impression that, well, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
The fact that all of us struggle with it does not make it any less bad.
Right.
That it's really bad. And your point that you make is that it damages relationships. It injects a level of mistrust and friction in a relationship. So I never want to minimize that. But what I do want to extend is, okay, you lied. And whether you were going to confess it or not, we found out about it, and now you're confessing it, and I accept that confession, and I'm going to believe the best in you, and believe that you are going to try to turn this around, which doesn't mean you're never going to do it again. It likely will happen, and especially with children. I mean, we've said that they are learners, that they're going through life, and experiencing things and growing and learning about stuff. And some kids have to learn the same lesson in a variety of situations. It's not it happened once, I now get it.
You're right.
I will never give in to that temptation again. I will triumph. Well, we as adults, as you said, don't even function that way. Sometimes
but wouldn't
we don't
it be
even know.
Cool if we did? Parenting would be a lot easier. Okay, I'm going to teach you this lesson. Write it down if you have to. But I'm not going to have to teach this lesson ever again.
Now we're done.
We got it.
Yes.
Well, that part I got down.
And sometimes I have that very unrealistic expectation. I mean, when you put it that way, it sounds really stupid, which makes my perspective sound stupid. And, well, let's admit it, it is. But at the time, it doesn't feel stupid.
No. It feels very practical.
It feels totally
Why do
valid.
I have to keep talking about the same thing?
We already had this conversation. You already confessed and repented once. I thought we were over this.
I don't want to have to repeat myself.
Yes. But the truth of the matter is God extends grace to us all the time. He talks about how many times do you forgive someone who infracts against you in some way. Well, he says 70 times 7, which we all know is a lot.
Can you say infract on a podcast? Is that a...
I think so.
Okay.
So if that's what we're supposed to do when God's talking about adults, I think I can apply that to my children as well.
Yeah.
And that
right.
I extend them forgiveness even before they confess and even before they repent. But I hold them accountable for whatever it is that they have done. If they have been dishonest, then yes, they lose privileges. And they suffer a natural consequence of, we don't trust you to tell the truth instinctively. We were trusting you and we realized, okay, right now you're struggling with that. We have to see some growth in that area before we're going to trust you at the same level. And then if there is a similar occurrence, well, we're beginning to see a pattern. And so maybe this is something that you just aren't ready for any freedom in. And we again take away some privileges, whatever it is, to try to teach you about honesty. I think the last thing that I would say about that is how we as parents respond when our kids finally are truthful about things. And usually the things that they find hard to be truthful about are things they've done that are wrong.
Right.
So they've misbehaved, they've done something that they know you're going to be really upset about, and that's why they're hiding it. That's why they are lying about it. So when your child does tell you the truth, does open up and say, this is what I did, and it's quite bad, how you respond to it is going to dictate whether that child is going to feel free to be honest in the future. I'm not saying that you lift any consequences or make them feel good about their lie or about their bad behavior, but there has to be a level of acceptance and love and assurance and affirmation of the other, of the child, that I'm glad that you told me this. It's so good for our relationship. It's so good for you. It's a great reflection on you that you're willing to tell the truth even when it's really hard. It shows great courage, and that you affirm that act, and that you then together talk about, so you did this bad thing. And I think if they're old enough, and I think by even 7 years old, they're old enough to be involved in a discussion of, so what do you think would be an appropriate discipline? Because this behavior, this thing you did was wrong, right?
Yeah.
And they always agree, yes, it was wrong. Okay, well, what should we do to help you remember not to do it again?
Right.
What kind of discipline would be effective?
And that's something you really have to work on. Some people have to work on it harder than the others. But just, not to react.
And I want to react.
Right.
And I want to say, you did what?
Exactly, right.
What were you thinking?
Right.
Why did you do that? You know you're not supposed to do that. None of those things are helpful.
Right. Your first response can't be the emotional blow up. Dad, that dent in the fender, I did that. I ran into the stop sign. What? why weren't you looking? Yeah, and then you just blow up, and then they make this little mental note: never
Note to self.
be honest with my dad again when it comes to driving practices.
Come up with a better story.
Yeah, right. So yeah, and so to be just okay, wait, steel yourself, kind of calm down, say thank you. I appreciate you being honest with me about that. And compliment
equally
the character.
frank that you don't appreciate what they did.
Right.
But that what's most important is that you have an open line of communication and that we can talk about anything. And if you can do that at a young age, if we're successful with our 7-year-old, when she faces really big things in life and totally blows it, we will be the people that she will come back to and say, I've got to talk to you about something. I just made a really bad mistake.
Right.
And that's what I want. I want to build for that moment.
Exactly.
So these little picayune things that I want to get all upset about right now, I'm constantly reminding myself. So you're building either a bridge or a wall with your kid.
Yeah.
And I want to build a bridge, even if it means that sometimes I feel like I'm being too merciful and extending too much grace because they begin to take advantage of it.